Lives down here now.
Sorry if you got any of that preamble there from Taylor talking about his family. You are listening to the analysis session the day after Origin 3 of 2024. It's a combined rugby league coach podcast with that of the Around the Town with Taylor Brown podcast, and all the protagonists are here. My name is Lee Addison.
I'm Taylor Brown.
And I'm Brendon Rose.
And there's one Queenslander in this conversation who I think has a rough head today. And I don't know if that is because of his team's performance or he had a few too many sherbets. Yet there is a happy Taylor Brown from New South Wales as the Blues got up. So let's start with the winners, Taylor. No question apart from your first thoughts.
I honestly, when halftime rolled around and Queensland were up 2-0, I said, if the score stays the same, I'll be happy. That was an exceptional game of rugby league. Just really showed off the pinnacle of our game and what it's like having two quality sides just go at each other for 80 minutes. I actually, probably 5 minutes or 10 minutes into the game, I was watching the game with someone and they said, oh, you know, uh, are you nervous? No one's scored yet. And I said, honestly, if someone wins 1-0, I'll be happy because they're the games you want to watch. And
yeah,
to go into the half at 2-0, it was just an impressive game of rugby league, no matter which way you look at it.
Brendon, your team lost. Are you quite as enthusiastic about what you saw?
Oh, I thought it was a good game of football. It was brutal. Considering the amount of players Queensland had out. I thought especially in the middle, I thought they were very gallant, but I just think, if you hit a brick wall with a sledgehammer 100 times, sooner or later it's going to fall down.
So the game was 14-4. Tries were scored by Bradman Best and Mitchell Moses for New South Wales, and Zach Lomax kicked 3 goals, one of them a penalty goal, the other 2 conversions, actually back-to-back tries and conversions, actually, more or less. And Queensland couldn't get on the score sheet try-wise. They only got 2 penalty goals via Valentine Holmes. Because this is also a Rugby League Coach podcast, Taylor, I am going to throw in a lot more of my opinions, and we'll sort of all get chance today. First thing on my notes is I think Billy Slater has a lot to answer for in the whole series. So I think he got his prop rotation wrong, and also the choice of his hookers, which one started and which one came off the bench. I feel he should have brought Kalen Ponga on after 20 or so minutes of the first half, not the second half, and he should have kept him on for an hour. I thought their vision from a middle split defensively for New South Wales wasn't great. Over 2 games, the last 2 games, I've noticed it's been quite a nip and tuck battle. So yesterday, for about an hour, it was a nip and tuck battle. Longer than that, there was no quarter asked nor given. Yet in Melbourne, that nip and tuck lasted 15 minutes. On both occasions, Queensland were the first team to cede control, and New South Wales got over the top of them. I thought back at Melbourne, his preparation for that was poor. I thought they went down later than New South Wales from memory, so they went there and they probably weren't mentally right for it on that day. And that's not with hindsight. It's something we said after the game. I thought Madge got in his head after Origin 2 and Origin 3. Sorry, before Origin 2 and before Origin 3. And the signs were that I think Billy was getting a bit snappy with journalists. And a classic example of a coach, 2 classic examples really of a coach overthinking things and getting a bit wound up. He banned the media day, the open day, whatever it was, that they've done for a million years. And also he made a very late change to the team and didn't just change one person. He changed three. So I've talked about the whole series there, the last two games as well as the game, and I've ended up back at the game yesterday as we record. Taylor, am I being too harsh on Billy there?
I don't believe you're being too harsh on Billy. I think those changes, he'd thought them up, and he's. You can see it's Queensland's tactic. It has been for a long time in Origin. New South Wales pick their side on Sunday afternoon, and Queensland pick it Monday morning. I think they err on the element of surprise and things like that in a week and a half camp. They do that a lot. It's not a surprise when Queensland make late changes, whereas you don't see it in New South Wales. They play a lot more mind games. We always talk about how they get into camp and they say, who's going to be sick this week? They play games with the media. They play games against the Blues. I'm not too surprised by that. I thought the team he trotted out was a bit more physical to start the game with Kafusi and Mo Fotuaika starting. I was interested with the Hunt and Grant switch. I thought he probably got that wrong. Harry Grant's got an exceptional running game. And I guess that works wonders when you're 20 minutes in or 25 minutes in. But I thought he may have got that wrong. Kalen Pong is an interesting one. It was always a tough selection when we spoke about it last week, the week before. Queensland just lost the middle battle every single game, and they did nothing to change that. In fact, they got rid of size with Jaden Stewart for this game. And that was evident last night. Now, they needed to have an exceptional attacking game plan with Kalen Ponga on the field to mitigate the fact that they were almost guaranteed to lose that middle forward battle. They
left him sat on his backside for an hour.
They left him getting splinters for the majority of the game. So I thought they would have played a more attacking brand of football last night than they did. And they picked a team to play that attacking brand. And then I felt like they didn't really fire a shot. When they did have the ascendancy, I thought, here we go, they'll put something on here, and they just didn't. So I definitely think Billy Slater got some things wrong this season, this series, absolutely. In terms of media mind games and things like that, I mean, you're almost the only other NRL coach you see being that upset about things is probably Benji Marshall. He's been known to snap at the media when they.
And they're both novice coaches. They're both novice coaches.
They're either novice coaches or they're younger generational coaches too. They're probably good point. They're the same age, and I don't know if they have similar views on the media because they've only just got out of that media scrutiny themselves as players. So they might carry that existential.
But also, both of them have media experience, significant media experience. So you think they'd be better placed to deal with it.
Yeah.
Brendan, a few weeks back on this podcast, I think, as in the Around the Town with Taylor Brown podcast, I said to you that Billy might be in some trouble because he's finally coaching against a real coach. And we had a bit of a tete-a-tete, I think, about the coaching credentials of Billy and whatnot. How do you feel about Billy now as a coach after watching this series?
Oh, I think I agree. This is probably the first time ever I've seen, and I've been down in New South Wales for 3 or 4 or 5 years now. I think this is the first time I've actually seen the New South Wales press / media actually unite behind the team. Previously, they're having snipes, and it did take its toll on Billy, and I think he needs to learn how to deal with that better. And Madge did a great job on that. I wouldn't say, if you look at, but we all agree New South Wales won the middle in all 3 games, even when they were down a player. I think we all agree. I don't know, even if every player's fit, I don't know if there's any new players that could come into that team. Matt, I wouldn't say Madge had some all-encompassing great game plan technically. His game plan was to bash him up, and I mean legally bash him up through the middle, wear them out. And
I'm just going to butt in there, Brendan. I'm going to give Madge more credit for the way New South Wales put it together in good ball. So what you refer to as a red zone, because of what Westpac do on a Wednesday night, and I think they were better in that area than they were under Fittler.
That's true, but then also too, I think Luai's a better player this year than he was under Fittler. I think I thought they were quite ordinary. The amount of good ball they had in their first half, the amount of good ball they had in the second half, and they didn't. There was only 2 inches and good on them. When Moses stood up one of the Queensland players, scored, and then Luai did a bit of brilliance, at the halfway line, and then Brendon Best ends up scoring at the end. But the amount of ball they had, there was a lot of time when there was left and right. There was where in the second game, Luai and Moses actually worked together, and he might have got 260 meters, and he might have got man of the match, but I don't think Dylan Edwards actually offered much on the try line.
Did he get man of the match? I went to bed earlier.
Yeah, he got man of the match. I don't think he really offered a lot in that green ball zone as well. Don't get me wrong, they got
green ball.
I'll get there eventually. Don't get me wrong, they were beating them up. They were physically dominant. They were, and they just ground them down. Like Queensland were very gallant, but I'll be really interested to see on what happens, in the next few years. Fittler won his first series, and everyone thought he was going to be the next Mel Meninga and win 9 in a row. But
Madge is a coach, though. Madge is a coach.
Let's take a step back a bit. Bradman Best also bombed 2 blatant opportunities throughout that first half.
Yes,
he found himself in space. So their attack wasn't non-existent, where they found themselves in good space. I thought they shifted the ball very well early in the sets.
New South Wales dominated field position in those opening exchanges. I mean, there was nothing between the two teams apart from the field position difference.
Yeah.
New South Wales were pinning Queensland back quite significantly.
I think the reason why they were pinging them back was Moses's and Luai's superior kicking game. And it was evident, especially his long kicking game.
Yeah,
was. And I will say one thing: whoever brought in Richie Mailga into the camp, I think a few more NRL teams should be signing him up, because what he did with Luai's dropouts was that was as good as I've seen anyone.
One thing that struck me in the game was how, in both games, both Origin games, there's clearly been one side on top. The forwards were getting momentum, and therefore the halves basically were able to play with the dinner suit. Both halves yesterday were playing against packs that weren't winning for big chunks of the game. Like, they were basically neutralizing each other. Like I say, I believe the only difference was that New South Wales were winning the field position battle, and you've mentioned the kicks, was I think they were actually cancelling. I mean, how many times you see Payne Haas knocked on his Haas? Because that happened a couple of times yesterday. I saw Angus Crichton knocked on his, and then I saw several occasions where Queenslanders were knocked on theirs, and I don't think anything was asked or given in the middle. And I think Queensland hung in there for a long time. And what was evident was that both halves, Taylor, didn't have that much room to play.
They really didn't. And I actually thought Tom Dearden and the Hammer defended really well together on that left edge for Queensland. I think Tom Dearden had probably one of the best defensive efforts I've seen from a half on Liam Martin. You think about how many times that Moses went short to Martin, and Dearden did a number on him. A couple of times he lost the ball. Liam Martin got picked up and driven back by Dearden at one stage. I thought Tom Dearden had an exceptional game, and the Hammer was shutting down a lot of that attack as well. Rosie, you said earlier that you didn't think they had a superior attacking game. I think that they had really good success on the left. There was two bombed opportunities from Best, and then that try. They certainly had success on that left edge. But on the right edge, you're discounting how well that the Maroons defended. And as a Blue, I can openly say this. There is something special about the Queensland spirit. I see that in their game. Sometimes they do have something where I'd say a team of less superstars or something like that, which no knock on those players, but they do seem to defend really well. Look at Lindsay Collins coming to stop that try in the right-hand corner. I believe it was Zach Lomax. He stopped that try. Reece Walsh also stopped another try with that. Ended up being a penalty, but they stopped 2 tries on that right edge as well. So they were making inroads, but Queensland defended exceptionally in those periods of time. So I don't necessarily think Madge had no game plan. I think Queensland did a really good job shutting them down. You can't take away how well Queensland defended, and you can't discount what Madge did in attack because they definitely counted each other out. Andrew Johns had a really good point today. He said that the 5th tackle options in Origin are just so important how you end your sets. And Moses is not just his length of kick, but the height and hang time he had on those kicks in order for the defensive the line to get down there. You know, I need to put my hand up here like I did after Origin 2. I've previously said I don't know if Mitch Moses can play the big games as a 7. He proved me wrong. And not that I ever thought he wasn't a great player. He's an exceptional player. I just saw him more of a 6, but he really shone really bright last night. And I had him as man of the series, even with only 2 games under his belt. I thought that without Mitch Moses, New South Wales, have a lot tougher time and probably do not win the series.
Oh, what a difference he made. I mean, remember how bad Nico Hines was in game 1?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think Mitch Moses was brilliant, and there were a great Angus Crichton was also outstanding. You can't knock that, but I thought that player of the series for mine was Mitch Moses. He was exceptional, and just that game to watch. You're right; it was very physically brutal in the middle there, and I disagree with you that they cancelled each other out. I still think New South Wales had the better of those forward battle run-ins, but the kicking game from New South Wales just made so much more of a punch because they had to come out of their own end and they couldn't attack. They really couldn't attack Queensland.
I agree with that. The geometry of how you explain in the kicks. If you look at the Queensland kicks, they were kicking them probably about the 30, 40 metre line. They were quite flat. And Dylan Edwards' 260 yards was quite inflated by the bad Queensland kicking game because there was a lot of times where he was catching the ball and running a good 20, 25 metres before he even got engaged by that defensive line. Where the difference is where Mitch Moses will kick and it was probably going the same distance, but the hang time was probably 1 or 2 seconds longer, which meant the New South Wales defensive line was probably a good 10, 15 metres closer.
I agree.
I seem to remember during the game as well, though, and the commentators were saying this too, that there were concerns about the way both teams were attacking. I mean, I know Moley, the mole on the journalist, the mole, he was at halftime on X, which was formerly known as Twitter, suggesting that there wasn't much creative football. And I think I wouldn't go that far. I just thought that they were a bit one-dimensional, both sides, and I do include New South Wales in that. So yes, they were playing off a forward pack that I still believe was cancelling each other out, but they also didn't throw much else in. So there wasn't much in terms of change of direction. There wasn't much in terms of switch plays and things like that. So I agree with Moley to an extent. It wasn't the most creative attacking stuff, particularly early on in the first half. And that's from both sides. Is that something you notice, guys?
I definitely agree on the Queensland side. I can remember several occasions where the Blues shifted early in their half and got it to Crichton. Especially they went from right to left a lot. And I think, I haven't looked at the statistics, but I think if you looked at Brian To'o's hit-ups and run meters, it would probably reflect on what would be a poor game by his standards. But it's just because they did shift a lot to that left-hand edge and just get on the outside of Queensland's ruck speed.
And that's
what
they were kicking away. They were kicking sort of, and Lomax was always doing that first hit up where Toto would normally do that first hit up, and be doing 290 million yards in a game because he's just a tank. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I actually thought the Blues were a lot better with the ball in hand in terms of shifting, and they threw a lot more at Queensland. I think that the physicality of the game was taking its toll on Queensland's pack, and their whole team list. Really, I think it really made a difference. And yeah, I just think that it was a great game of football, but the Blues tactically were a lot better in those early exchanges as well.
I think they could look better because I think Queensland had to use extra petrol every set of six because they had to go at 110% to. I know Lee said match them, but I'm definitely with you, TB. I thought that Queensland were redlining, and it was gonna sooner or later they were gonna slowly come down, especially the outside backs. They did a really New South Wales. I know did a great job. I know Cherry Evans did a good job, but eventually guys like Liam Martin and Angus Crichton running at him took its toll, and I think that was why there was that, especially the Moses try, how they just dropped off tackles, and I think that was just through sheer fatigue.
Can we just move off tactically for a second, Brendan?
Yeah.
You said at the start of this podcast that Queensland had a number of players out.
Yeah.
Talk to me. I don't see this argument necessarily.
Tino.
Well, you've got everyone.
Tino and Munster.
Monster.
Flegler, the other guy from the Dolphins, Gilbert. All guys that dominate and have a presence in the middle of the field. I think Munster and Cleary rule each other out at that level. At club level, I'd say Cleary's a better player, but at Origin, you'd have to say that Munster's had a better, more impact. But the reason why New South Wales was so dominant was because they were dominant in the middle, and Queensland just couldn't match that aggression. But you put in guys like your Flegler, your Tino, and your Gilbert. Gilbert's, I feel sorry for the bloke. He's had 2 years off. Because of injury. But you put those three guys in the field and in the middle of the field, and you probably I just think they would definitely not have that same dominance.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. I to be completely honest, I had left Gilbert and Flegler out of my thoughts for that.
Flegler can play footy again. I'm actually really worried from a lot of the reports that we hear about that shoulder. To be fair, so
yeah, as am I. But yeah, apologies there. I did not see those two, and mainly because they both haven't really been available since about round 4 or 5. So that's why they slipped my mind.
But New South Wales had people missing too. So
Cleary was the main person missing. Obviously, Latrell Mitchell was missing. Tom Trebojevic was missing. If he's fit for a couple of rounds, he's playing. So there is still some big names there. 3 really big names for the Blues missing, but also different spectrums of the park.
Yeah, I just think where New South Wales was so dominant was in the middle. And I just think those 3, I'm not saying that there could be a different, I just don't think New South Wales have that same luxury and dominance because I don't care what anyone says. They dominated and bullied, not so much bullied in the last game, but they definitely dominated the middle of the field. I'm with you, TB, that they were, They mind you, Spencer didn't have a big game last night. I thought of the 3 games, that was probably his quietest.
I thought Isaiah Yao was outstanding. Yao was great.
Between him and Luai, I think they were both unlucky not to get man of the series. I thought Luai was the best player on the paddock last night. I thought he was very, very good and did a lot of things that he made a lot of tackles on that. He's on the left edge when Queensland were doing Walsh was starting to get a bit of space and then putting Gagai into space. He was doing a lot of defense that a lot of people didn't see. I thought Luai's really stepped up and developed his game this year, and I think maybe that $1.4 million West Tigers are paying for him might be really good.
I was about to ask, hindsight, Tigers signing Luai for the big wad. hindsight, you look at that and you go, Tigers have got a fair trade here. Whereas at the start, I know, Brendan, you were quite particular about it. You said he's not worth the bag of cash they're throwing at him. And now it's, he's proven himself in the Origin arena and he's proven himself at Clubland for a long time without Cleary. You're starting to think, okay, they're onto a winner.
I think he's probably in the top 4 or 5 halfbacks in the comp now.
Let's go through the teams, boys. We always start with the vanquished, and then we'll go to the vanquishers. Reece Walsh, poor for me.
Poor. With Reece Walsh, I have to try and take my personal bias about some of this. I find he's a very self-centered player. There were several times last night where he's been tackled and he's slow to get up off the ground in good ball and things like that, whereas you don't see a Dylan Edwards do that at all.
No.
And there was a really good post I saw yesterday. Dylan Edwards constantly showing up, none of the flashy stuff, but just did his job exceptionally for his team, versus Reece Walsh, who can produce a flash of brilliance, but he can also produce errors and things like that. I think that Reece Walsh was poor and almost starting to get a little bit found out by that level of football.
Well, he's not kicked on from last year.
Yeah, I agree on that. I think if you also look, I thought he worked hard in the red zone in defence. There was a lot of times he was defending in the middle in that front line, and I thought that showed a little bit. But I agree, he's been targeted this 12 months, and he needs to evolve his game.
Selwyn Cobbo.
I thought he was poor.
I didn't think he was poor. I thought he was definitely better than poor. He was pushing up and trying to make something happen through the middle of the park, through some of those kick chases. I thought he definitely tried his hardest, but not his best game either. I'd have him at a better 5.5 or something like that out of 10.
Yeah, I've not really got a read on his game. Really, he was a bit anonymous at times, but he also got physical at times too. Again, another big time for him, I'd say, in his career. I think he got moved to the centres this year, and I'm not sure he's had the impact that people wanted him to have from the Broncos. Dane Gagai at fault for the first try, actually.
Dane Gagai was stood up by Bradman Best on every occasion. And one thing I didn't like about Dane Gagai is when there's a push and a shove, fair enough. But it seemed like he was trying to throw his hands up every single occasion he could. I feel like, I don't know if in his head, people have spoken to him about the Origin moment where him and Burton got into it, and now he thinks, yeah, that's a great Origin moment, but it's almost like he was looking for that last night, and he didn't necessarily play with that physicality. He just looked for the fight. I thought maybe he was trying to get to an end result of playing tough football without playing the tough football first.
Brendan?
I think we saw the passing of the baton of the number one centre in Newcastle. I think the apprentice got the master last night.
Quite possibly. Hamiso Tabuai Fidel.
Defensively exceptional.
Yeah, and I don't think they gave him enough ball, TB.
No, I thought the Hammer did a lot with the opportunities that he did have. He looked dangerous. But if I was in a Queensland selectors jumper for next year, I'll tell you what, I'd almost pick the Hammer over Walsh and Kalen Ponga for the fullback jersey. I just think when he is in and around the football, he makes things happen. I would argue he does it at a higher success rate than Walsh in terms of turnovers and lost balls and things like that. And yeah, I think the Hammer's probably the best fullback in Queensland.
Val Holmes.
I think at this level, that's his position.
I thought he was good.
Yeah, I just think at that level, I just don't think he's a centre at that level, but he's a very good winger at that level. Kept Lomax out of the game. And Lomax is probably the best winger. Him and Toto are the best wingers in the game at the moment, but Val Holmes at least matched him with points.
Tom Dearden, brilliant.
Mm. I think other than his kicking game, he was really, really solid for Queensland. But yeah, even in clubland, Chad Townsend takes over a lot of that kicking load for Dearden, especially long kicks. And Dearden's just left for the stuff in goals, sort of in that green zone. But I think Dearden did play hard on his sleeve stuff, and to stand up to Liam Martin the way he did was very impressive for mine.
Cherry Evans.
I thought he defended it, but I think Crichton got into his head, and I think Luai. I think he's slowly starting to realise that, maybe the old legs and his time in that arena is slowly coming to an end. Whether it'll be this year or next year, I'm not sure. But I don't. He had a poor kicking game, which is usually a big strength of his, and he doesn't usually let players get into his head. But Crichton and Luai were definitely living rent free in his head on last night.
Mo Fotuaika.
I thought he actually had a good game.
He was fine.
Yeah.
I would have preferred him off the bench though, but I'll be honest.
I think Slater wanted to match the physicality early, so he put Fotuaika in the starting line. But I think he's been caught in two mindsets there, Billy Slater. He wanted the fast attacking team, and he had Fotuaika on the bench for impact to complement that. And then he saw, I've got to match size for size. So he's gone one way with team selections and then another way with tactically, I believe, with that Fotuaika change.
I think also too, because Queensland weren't given much impact off the bench in the first two games, he's thought, okay, I'll put my starting pack. And he sort of, by pushing Cotter to the second row, and then he goes, well, now I can bring Lindsay Collins on and maybe he can make an impact. And yeah, I think he got that whole rotation wrong.
Felice Kafusi, I'll do the other prop first. He had a nothing game.
Yeah.
He had a nothing game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Harry Grant. I thought it was his best game of the series.
But that's not hard. I think he's had a poor series. I think he was pretty poor in the first two games. I think the hooker rotation got thrown out the window a little bit when Ben Hunt came on, and within about 5-10 minutes he got knocked out, and then Harry Grant come back on. So I think that whole rotation was a bit weird. But I agree, that was probably Harry Grant's better games. And
I also think he would have done better if he was coming on as a second hooker. That things would have been broken down a little bit more. Taylor?
Yeah, I agree. I think Harry Grant in that arena at the moment, if they want to keep Hunt there, comes off the bench and makes that impact. And then because one of his most attacking assets and his dangerous assets is his running game. And coming on against tired forwards that have just played the way they did for 25 minutes, if you bring Grant onto the field, then I just think, the running game could have made a real difference. And you supplement that with the Kalen Ponga as well. And then all of a sudden you've got Ponga and Grant doing lots of damage in the middle of the paddock. We didn't see it. And a good game by Grant. I just think tactically used wrong.
And he didn't kick. He's usually got a really good kicking game out of both him and Hunt have got a really good kicking game out of dummy half. And I don't know if they made one kick out of dummy half all game.
Ruben Cotter.
I think he tried, but I think without big boys beside him, I think his effectiveness isn't as good.
I agree. I think he was nullified at every marker for a forward.
Kurt Capewell, Taylor?
I would have much rather Jaden Sewer. I know Kurt Capewell covers a fair few positions, but Jaden Sewer has an aggressive edge that Kurt Capewell doesn't have.
Would you rather David Fafita?
Oh, much rather. And I openly advertised that last week. Much rather David Fafita. And
he's the kind of player that could have broken it open a little bit in the middle.
And I think that if you look at the Queensland's pack now, looking back at it, with no, I don't mean to offend anyone, but it's very vanilla. There's no chocolate note. There's no hazelnut. There's no, it's not even a bit of hokey pokey. It's just all very vanilla. And I think that's what was their downfall last night. They didn't have anyone that was going to bring on the fire brand. Even Mo Fodawaker, not necessarily known as a game breaker, is he?
No.
We spoke about this about Parramatta, I think, earlier, that they're all the same type of player because we're all attacking guys, where Queensland were all worker bees, and it sort of left a lot to do for Cherry Evans and Dearden. And I wouldn't exactly say they're more worker bees themselves as well. But yeah, you definitely need that a forward to come in there and all the good Queensland teams have one. Carl Webb, to name one. There's yeah, and I agree. They're all very bland. You know what you're going to get, but at this level, you need to have a difference.
Pat Carrigan.
I thought he was the best player in a maroon jersey, and I thought he was probably one of the best players on the paddock last night.
I just worry about some of the lines he runs. He runs back into the ruck a bit too much.
I think that he had a really strong night and didn't stop trying. You could tell he was frustrated with the fact that they were getting beaten as a pack, and he tried to shoulder the workload because I think he thought I had to, which he did have to, and he did step up to the plate. I think you can still have an 8 out of 10 game and just lose the middle of the field if you're doing it by yourself. And I think that was for Pat Carrigan last night.
Mate, he made 160 yards and 61 tackles and no mistakes from a that's getting dominated.
He was brilliant. Like I say, it's just the lines of run. I think he needs to get better. Ben Hunt.
He had a nothing game, and that's I think that head knock affected him more than anyone would say.
All right, we'll move on. Lindsay Collins.
Can I just mention with Ben Hunt? Now, Angus Crichton came off the field and was openly saying, "My head's fine. It's my neck." You can't hear him.
Yeah.
You could see he was saying it. He come off and he was assessed as Category 2 symptoms. Then when Ben Hunt come off, blatantly his arms went stiff. They said, "Oh, he's presenting Category 2 symptoms." I said, "Sorry, if Angus Crichton's Category 2, that's Category 47." The difference was daylight. There was daylight between them, and I could not believe that Ben Hunt was classified as Category 2. I couldn't believe it.
It should have been a Category 0.
Oh.
0 time on the field. Yeah.
Oh. If Lindsay Collins was probably the face of the prop rotation in terms of people who thought he might have got it wrong, old Billy, and he probably should have been on the field when the whips were cracking.
I thought Lindsay Collins has been poor. He was very good last year. I think in regards to his, I'll say his day job, in regards to that middle, I think he's been quite poor. Yeah, he's done some really good effort areas, and TB highlighted him before, but he got manhandled a bit in this series, and I think he knows it.
Yeah, but I also think, when he had a little bit of help around him with that firebrand stuff, that's where he shone through. I think maybe team selections have also hurt Lindsay a little bit there. He's known for his those games. In those games, he does something that's game breaking, but it's never usually a 30-meter hit up or anything.
What he did do last night, I remember him scrambling and making a tackle that you thought that an back should be making and things like that. So he's, you could never imagine Shane Webke doing that or Petro,
No. And that's my point is I still think he had a solid game. I just think compared to last year, jumping over Tedesco and things like that, I mean, those that he didn't have that game, but he still had a fair game.
Jeremiah Nanai.
Thought he defended well.
Yeah, I do. I agree,
yeah. Yeah, I don't think he offered a lot in attack, but I think he did his job. I think Queensland need to find another outside, an edge forward, moving forward, because there's none injured. But yeah.
And anything on him, Taylor, or do you want to talk about Kalen Ponga? Or have we covered that already?
No, we sort of covered both of them, I believe.
Yeah, all right. The Blues, the victorious Blues, Taylor's victorious Blues. So Dylan Edwards, you can go first, Taylor.
Yeah, I thought he had a very, very safe game and just a workaholic.
Yeah,
very workaholic, and you know what you're going to get out of him. His best game and his worst game would be, millimeters apart,
that's
and
right.
he was exceptional last night
I
again.
remember thinking in some of those earlier exchanges that New South Wales might have a chance of breaking some bread, if breaking some eggs. Sorry, if a certain Jay Tedesco was at fullback rather than Dylan Edwards, because he does come across as a little bit one dimensional sometimes, doesn't he?
Yes, he does, but that's where, as we spoke about before, he's an exceptional player, but he's another one of the vanillas. But when you have a Luai and things like that were making things happen and they were creating opportunities, the vanilla can be the winning part of the dish. And I just think that what you're going to get out of him. He was exceptional at it, and he complemented the team extremely well.
Brian Toto.
I thought he had a Brian Toto game. Every time he got the ball,
opposed to a Roger Toto.
No, but every time he got the ball, he would put his nose through the line. He'd get a quick ball and he'd make 12, 15 meters.
Some good defensive efforts.
And defensively, he's very safe. I don't know how he hides himself under a high ball. The guy's probably 4'10", but he somehow hides himself from high balls. But you ready for this? The guy jumped on an aeroplane this morning. He's still in his full kit. I'd hate to be sitting next to him. I don't think.
Good on him. Good on him.
Bradman Best.
He was up and down, wasn't he? Yes, he had the flash of brilliance with the try. No one's taken that away from him. And the mental fortitude to get through the game, the way his lip was split. I looked at that lip when I noticed the blood, but when I noticed where it was, I thought he's probably going to need plastic surgery, because anything to do with that lip lining, if you split it, usually that's when you need to see a plastic surgeon. In and around the lips is fine, but as soon as it goes into the actual lip itself, often you need plastic surgery to fix it, to reconstruct that area. And I thought last night, I said, that's going to cause him nightmares. For him to play through that, it was great. And I thought great effort areas, great try, but he probably bombed a few opportunities as well.
In terms of his overall impact on the game, though, my thoughts are that he was a more than able deputy for Latrell Mitchell.
Absolutely.
Where does the guy, and this is, and we talked about it earlier about Trebojevic, like Turbo and Latrell, and so where does Crichton and where does Brendon Best fit in if they're all fit? And realistically, I don't know if the team's any better with those two in it. You know what I mean? Like, because they fitted into the system really well. I think both of them probably will. Definitely Crichton defends a lot better than any of the other three. I think Brendon Best is probably the least favoured of the four. But I think he was good. It's all right. His soon-to-be father-in-law will be able to tell him about how to fix split lips. So
he's also only 22, so he very much represents the future of New South Wales, I think. I'd be very happy if I was a New South Welshman last night with what he brought. Stephen Crichton, I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, he was, and he shone as a leader in the Origin arena as much as he has for the Bulldogs. I really felt that his leadership last night shone through.
I think his leadership over the whole three games has been. He got a bit loose at the second half of the second game. He got a bit loose, but he said, I thought he was really. Yeah, I definitely think he's probably one of the best young leaders coming through the NRL at the moment. I could probably see him and in future years, him and Pat Carrigan as the two captains probably in the next 2 to 3 years for respective teams. That's why I say where does Trebojevic fit? Where does Mitchell fit? Because Crichton's your next captain. I know they'll give it to Cleary, but I think Crichton's realistically the chief.
Oh, in terms of where they fit, mate, I think you could probably put Tom Trebojevic on a wing, but you'd have to sacrifice Zach Lomax, and the way Zach Lomax played, you wouldn't want to.
He's the next one. I thought he was just super solid. And he kicks a good goal as well.
So safe up high.
Gets good
so
goal
safe.
forward.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
I thought solid he wasn't as flashy as the first two games, but I think him and Val Holmes just cancelled each other out. But I'm not saying that's in a bad way. I just think they both had good games.
Isn't it a shame that he's leaving the Dragons to play centre, but he just seems to have flourished in that position as probably one of the best wingers in the game?
But it's funny, Ronaldo Mulatalo, I completely changed the subject. I, as his coach and mentor from being a junior, I used to say to him, I'd love you to get closer to the action, mate. Get in the middle, let them put you at lock or at 6 or centre. And then as his career's evolved, and then the moment I realised that he was 5th on the list of all-time try scorers for Cronulla, I've now changed it to stay on the wing, lad, stay on the wing. And I think we have a tendency, don't we, in the game to look at the wing as the sort of last, oh no, stick him on the wing kind of thing. And it's still around, and the wingers probably don't get as much money as the centres, etc., etc., etc. He's a great wing. He is a great wing.
He's outstanding.
There's no guarantee he's going to be playing centres for Parramatta, because if what we're hearing is correct, Talangi could go to fullback. And then where do you put Gutherson? The only place you'd probably put Gutherson's in the centres. I guess the only thing would be that Will Penasini. He hasn't developed in the last 12 months. Maybe he might be the one missing out. I don't know. But yeah.
Jerome Luai.
I think he was, as I said, I thought he was the man of the match last night. I thought he
was really good. Whereas Brownie, you said Mitchell Moses, didn't you?
I thought Mitchell Moses was to be the player of the series. In my opinion, I thought Mitchell Moses over the 2 games was a game changer for the Blues, and I had Mitchell Moses down as player of the series. But I wasn't opposed to Luai getting man of the match last night either.
I thought Luai was good. I think them two complement each other fine now.
Yeah, I think those two would probably complement each other better than a Cleary-Luai combination. I don't know why, but yeah, I just think those two would probably, yeah. Whether it's Luai sort of sits back a little bit more with Cleary.
Oh, I mean, I think there's three and a half premierships of data suggest that the Luai and Cleary combination works great, mate.
Yeah, at a club level, but they've never been successful.
Oh, they have been successful, just not constantly successful. Mitchell Moses has only got one over the line, so again, I don't think it's an apple and apple there.
Yeah.
Jake Trbojevic, I think Jake's one of my boys. I actually think Jake making him captain was an error, and I think Madge may have realised that with the amount of game time he's given him. But I think Jake is probably the captain of the group as well, if that makes any sense. So I think sometimes, like in a club, you have a club captain and a team captain.
Yeah,
I think that's what we've got there. Because I actually think there was no shortage of front rowers to come off the bench and big bodies to come off the bench. So a little bit. You hardly noticed Jake in this series, basically. And in other series we have noticed him.
Well, how many minutes did he really get? He probably didn't play a whole match over the 3 games.
He's played just over an hour, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard. It's hard because he does his job in that 20 minutes, but at the same time, it's.
Now they got away. Sorry.
I agree with that club captain sort of thing. We don't know what he does off the field, which has contributed to what they do on the field.
I can imagine. I mean, I coach the kids, so yeah, Reece Robson, right? I thought I don't think he is that good over 80 minutes of Origin. I think his performance drops right off, and I think they got away with it last night.
I think that if you look at the last probably 20 minutes, there were two times when Reece Robson gave away penalties back to back and marched Queensland downfield. And I was watching the game with another passionate blue, and he just said to me, Reece Robson just cost us that match.
Okay.
Now it didn't. He didn't, but I agree.
I remember the moment. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I agree that he was probably one of the poorer New South Wales players, and he certainly doesn't have a monopoly on that jersey moving forward.
I think behind that pack, with that momentum, Api Coruscant probably creates twice as much.
When you think that an interchange was probably wasted on Jake Trbojevic in all 3 games, having Api on the bench might have been a good option. But how can we complain when they won the series? You know, how can we? Payne Haas, I thought he was good.
He was.
Yeah, good. I thought that was his best series by a fair bit.
When he got knocked on his his Payne Haas, he let somebody else take the next hit up, and then he took the next one after that. I mean,
and it was damaging too. It was damaging.
Yeah,
and which is front row 1-on-1. If you get put on your backside, you need to make it better straight away.
He also went up. He knows. I know they're best mates, but he also went after Paddy Carrigan to a degree as well, which I think makes a bit of a statement to the other guys around him. And he also knows Pat Carrigan's the leader of that pack. And Liam
Martin.
I thought a very good firebrand worth of footy. I just thought he was relatively shut down by some strong defence.
What about his shoulder pad?
Huge, isn't it?
He looked like the hunchback of Notre Dame or something.
He also had that error coming into good ball, short, but that was again strong defence. So, I mean, you can't base someone's game off one drop ball.
He
strong defensively, and he's just an imposing figure, isn't he? Like a really imposing figure.
If I'm picking a club and a team, I know that Crichton got man of the series, but I'm picking Liam Martin every day of the week on an edge. He's in my team every day of the week. He's a lunatic from Temora, but he just seems like the ultimate team bloke.
Angus Crichton. I was happy. I
was happy with his game. I can't think of anything he'd done wrong. I mean, obviously he had to come off for a little spell, but I thought he was very strong again. He gets very involved with coming out of the red zone, doesn't he? Very involved. He takes a lot of tough carries, Angus Crichton. He's another great leader of that Blues pack.
Cameron Murray.
Well, he's the first player in history to get 10 minutes from the bench, so that's got to count for something.
I don't think he had much. Like he definitely didn't have the same impact from game 2.
Not impact, but work rate, something else.
Yeah.
Connor Watson. I like him on the bench, and you spoke before about, do you put Api Coruscant on the bench? I think it would have to be a straight swap for Reece Wobson. Wobson.
Yeah.
Possibly. Yeah.
I think he has a really good spot on that bench because he can fill in the halves if required, and he is a live wire. When he had the opportunity to run, he ran.
I thought Madge got him wrong. I think him similar to what we were saying about Billy Slater with Kalen Ponga. I really think they could have brought him on, say, 10 minutes to go in that first half when Robson was starting to drift away.
It was funny, the first game of a series is often the most cautious. Last night, I thought both teams were more cautious and coaches were more cautious. Isaiah Yeo.
I thought he was New South Wales' best forward. I think he's unlucky to get beaten by Crichton as man of the series. Even when they were down, he was very good. I remember you saying last year, Lee, just run the ball, don't pass it. It was like you've given him a text message and he's actually listened to you.
Yeah. He's also, when he does do that now, when he does pass, he really digs into the line quite significantly. I really liked it. Mitchell Barnett.
I thought he was really solid last night. Really solid. And I think he's sort of proven himself as a player for that arena now for the next couple of years.
I feel sorry for the poor bugger having to go off for 10 minutes.
I think you might see Jake maybe slide out the back and then Barnett sort of take that role and that starting front row with for New South Wales, I think.
And the last one, Spencer Leniu.
Very damaging. And again, I remember he took a hit up off the dropout, and he was on the charge. And this really frustrated me as a front rower because I know this is something I could have been accused of a lot. He got really caught up in I need to run straight over someone, so he just ran straight. And about 5 meters to the right, there was a 10-meter gap because Queensland had a big. And I was thinking, I know yes, you're proving yourself to be tough, but if he stepped 2 meters off his left foot, he probably would have had to have Reece Walsh to beat. But he was imposing. He was really strong for New South Wales. But I remember watching that dropout and going, oh, it was a tough run, and you're proving yourself running over the top of someone from the back fence. But because he's so quick, if he just stepped off the left foot, he would have been away.
I think he reminds me a little bit of Jared Warrior-Hargraves when he was younger. And then Jared, evolved his game to be probably one of the best front rowers of it, at least in the NRL mod. I'm actually a little bit disappointed that he doesn't get an extra season with. I think he could really bring his game to another level working with JWH. I really, because if you look early on in his career, they were very, that firebrand off the bench where Jared was able to evolve his game a bit more. Hopefully for Spencer, he doesn't spend 36 rounds suspended like JWH. But yeah, I just really think he could. He just needs to evolve those things in the game. I think you're right. Just be a bit smarter.
Thanks, boys, for your input today. Make sure you listen out for Around the Town with Taylor Brown and the Rugby League Coach podcast every Tuesday at the minute. They're all coming out, so make sure you listen out every Tuesday for those. Make sure for the rest of the year you listen to or look out for the analysis sessions for Rugby League Coach. Taylor, I hope you'll be joining us for some of those.
I've got my hand up, teacher.
Go on.
Are we not going to address the bench clearing moment that had Cameron Murray put 10 in the bin? Are we going to let that one slide? Or
I think we might get in trouble by the NRL because the NRL have really, really dropped the ball on this one, especially in a number of cases. I'm sorry, what they dished out today, it's not sending a good message back to junior and local football.
I wrote something on Facebook this morning that I thought, all right, all well and good. Ashley Klein didn't send him. I understand that one, but the game had to come down hard on him.
To get 2 games, especially Ola Kawota, he wasn't even involved in the game. He was given the honour to sit on the bench, and he gets involved in it, and he gets 2 weeks. That is absolute. And Cameron Murray running a significant. So what do we do at local league when someone comes in and they do the same and they mightn't throw a punch and they get 6 to 10 weeks? And I've seen this from people that are diehard South supporters that understand junior local league. They're going to get 6 to 6 months. And now they come out and they give them 2 weeks. That's soft. That is extremely, extremely soft.
So my question is, there were also Queenslanders in that fracas that had jumpers on that weren't on the field at the time. They had black jumpers on. I understand it was around the Queensland bench, but I think the game should come down just as hard on all of them. If you are off the field, you are off the field, and I don't care if it's I don't care if there's a fight 2 meters from you. If you are off the field, you are off the field. I understand that's hard to stop yourself, but we need to stop ourselves. We need to stop and think.
I'm not arguing with you, TB. If it means this weekend, like, okay, I think there needs to be one for the players, but a player that's not even involved in the game.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and one thing I can admit as well is very hard in the moment to get it. You can't pick the situation apart and say, well, Cameron Murray got involved, as did him from. You don't have the time to review the whole scenario and hand out punishments that affect that game. But one thing you do have is the time now to review it. You have the time now to review it and make it right. It's hard in the moment. I understand that, actually, Klein. You did what you had to do. It's tough. But you have the moment and the opportunity now to make that right and to send a message. It needs to.
Because what would happen on the Sunshine Coast if a spectator jumped the fence and got involved in a melee?
That's right.
I don't think they'd be playing for they wouldn't be allowed in a ground for 6 to 12 months. And this fella gets 2 weeks. Ridiculous.
Thanks, boys. Toodaloo.
See you, mate.